Welcome to Save Our Sleep. Tizzie and the Save Our Sleep team believe it's every child's right to receive comfort, a parent's right to demonstrate love, and everyone's right to a full night of sleep. This podcast is not a medical or scientific volume, but a collection of tried and tested solutions and tips based on my many years of experience with babies and young children. Its main purpose is to help parents understand and avoid sleep problems in young babies and toddlers.
We'd like to recognise the Wadawurrung people who are the traditional owners of this region, which Tizzie and myself live and are recording today's podcast on. We acknowledge and respect that they have taken care of this land and water and raised children in this nation for over an extraordinary 70,000 years. The Save Our Sleep podcast is dedicated to helping you prevent and solve sleep problems while having some fun along the way. We endeavour to discuss all things family related, starting from pre-conception all the way through to an adult child leaving home and beyond. Some topics may be triggering. If you find this is the case, please reach out to your or your child's health nurse or general practitioner. G'day and welcome back to the Save Our Sleep podcast, episode number 11. And welcome back with myself, Zoe Starr, and hello, Tizzie Hall. How are you today?
You've gone backwards. It's episode 12.
It's not.
It is.
Is it? Oh.
Episode 11 was on sleep and settling. It is episode
go us, because
12.
a lot of podcasters call that a series done,
Chapter
don't they?
5. Yes.
So
well,
go us. We
our
don't know what we're gonna
series
do.
is the first book, I think.
Yes. Yep.
So we're going to keep going and get through the first book.
But that's milestone. So, that's a really nice surprise. Cool. Episode
Yes,
12.
so
and
episode 12.
yeah, how are you, Tizzie?
So welcome to episode 12. And what's the crack?
What's the crack with your I'd love to know how you're recovering from surgery.
Well, it's a really good topic because my elbow surgery was, 3 weeks? It must be about 3 weeks ago now.
Mm.
And because obviously we're recording these ahead of time. So mainly because we're trying to get a few in before your baby comes. It went a bit backwards, my elbow surgery. So it was really, really good and it was fantastic. And then when I had my bowel surgery, I had a massive scar, a massive opening the whole way up the front of my tummy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I did a little experiment. Have you heard of silicone and silicone
I just made a note to ask you about
Yep.
this. But
have you heard about silicone scar? So it's like a plaster, but it's made from silicone. It's absolutely amazing.
I know nothing about
right?
them.
It's really sticky. It's really expensive. So
Okay.
what happened was, I was told after the bowel surgery by my friend who's a paediatrician that it would be really good to do silicone scar. You put the silicone tape over your scar and to do it. And then it was quite a few weeks after my bowel surgery. So I went to the chemist and I tried to get it and they were like, oh, it's expensive. And I was like, I paid $100 for this strip, which is just long enough for your Caesar scar.
Okay.
But of course, my bowel scar was double that size. So I had to get 2 strips. So it was about $200. And it was like, and if I'd actually wanted to cover the entire scar, I was a centimetre short. Okay. So my scar must be 20 centimetres.
Wow.
Maybe. It's quite big, my scar, which is gone. I'd love to pull my top up and show you. But so what I did was I did an experiment. I decided I was going to do an experiment on my tummy. Because I like doing experiments. I just like science. Okay.
Yes.
So I put one strip going up and then one strip going down. I left a little bit of a gap.
Yes.
Yeah? Well, you should see the gap. The bit down the bottom and the bit up the top, absolutely amazing, right? You cannot see. It's just, you can see the scar, but but the bit in the middle where I didn't use the silicone strip is bumpy and weird and red and raised. Unbelievable. So I had the elbow surgery and I went for my checkup a week after having the surgery. And they said to me, we need to talk to you about scarring. And I said, I don't need to worry about it. It's on my elbow. No one can see my elbow. And they were like, no, you do. Like, scars can cause problems. They can cause... And I don't want to list what the problems were, but I was like, oh, wow, didn't realise. Especially on your elbow, because you keep moving your elbow, and it keeps ripping open.
Tissue.
Anyway, and then I said, I'll just use silicone. And they were like, do you know about silicone? I'm like, yeah, I use silicone all the time. And I showed the guy, and he was like, the doctor, and they were like, "Oh, can you send us a brand used? Oh, that's amazing."
Oh,
And
wow.
anyway, and I said, "Is it okay to use it now?" And he said, "Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, start using it now, straight away."
Mhm.
Well, it wasn't okay to use it now.
Oh.
And I didn't realise, like the doctor didn't realise. And
Or the
so,
pharmacist maybe.
well, I didn't go to the pharmacist because the
okay.
amazing thing is that
Yes.
even these silicone strips, they're so expensive because they're reusable. So you use them and then you take it off in the shower and you wash it in the I washed it in the shower and I'd wash it with I'd wash it in alcohol stuff. And then I would put it on some, I call it poly roll. You call it kitchen towel. I call it poly roll.
Right.
I'd put it on
Paper
poly
towel.
roll to dry.
Yeah.
Yep. And it would dry and then it would be sticky and you put it back on. And I thought, I'm going to go and see if I've got some. And yes, amazingly enough, I had broken one of them before by accident and it was the perfect size, my elbow.
Okay.
So I slapped it straight on my elbow and it felt so good.
Wow.
And my elbow felt so protected.
Yeah.
And it stops the scar from like splitting and it keeps it moist, I think. And there's all these reasons why it's good.
Okay.
But you're not supposed to use it till 4 weeks after surgery.
Okay.
And I put it on a week after surgery.
Right.
And the whole thing got all gooey and pussy. And I don't even know if it got infected as such because it's kind of cleared itself up. But it wasn't good. And then it got me back to the whole influencer thing on Instagram and stuff because I was, I'm a little bit obsessed with some of the influencers
Just
and I keep watching them because I just can't understand what they're doing and we won't go there. Anyhow, one particular one that I watched showed this stuff and she was like, "Oh, you all need this and it's really good." And it was in one of her stories or something or one of the disappearing posts because it's gone now. But I thought, you're not giving the right advice because you need to tell people you can't use it till 4 weeks after surgery.
Right.
So I went and then looked on the package. I went and looked up the one I have and looked on their website and checked what it says. And it says start using 4 weeks after your Caesar.
Okay.
So just amazing, fantastic, brilliant. But my surgery went a bit backwards because it got all funny. And now I'm a bit scared to use it, but I will use it again.
Yes.
So I am going to put it back on.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm 4 weeks past surgery yet.
Okay.
But I think I've damaged my elbow by using it too soon.
No. Okay.
So, and I think I am going to contact the doctor and say, actually, you're not able to use it till week 4. Oh, did you have anything that you chit-chat that you needed to add?
No, nothing exciting.
Just ticking along?
Yeah, ticking along. We moved the boys into their new bedroom and that was as successful as it could have been, much too close to when the baby was coming for my liking. We know that we should keep everything as same as possible, minimal disruption, but we had to do it. Yeah, the boys are 4, so they are a bit older and it was fun and they've got a new special room which is beautiful with an old fireplace in it, so I'm liking that and everything's good. Oh, and I just want to say I'm feeling so amazing in the 3rd trimester and I was expecting to feel horrible and tired because I felt horrible and tired in the 1st and the 2nd, and I've always heard that the 3rd is, you're in pain and you're just exhausted, but I don't know why. I just feel so great and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you to the 3rd trimester gods. I can't believe he's still in there. I really, really can't. I'm so, so, so grateful and I'm feeling good, like he's going to stay in there until he should.
So how many weeks? Well, now he can come out and he can even just come
so.
out and go home. He doesn't even need to. You could have him at home now and not even need to go to hospital if you wanted to.
Incredible.
Not that you'd want to, but you know what I mean. Like he's way past all the risks. I mean, he's been in there, 11 weeks longer than the boys were.
Yes.
He's 11 weeks more cooked than the boys.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And he's 3 times the size. Isn't that crazy?
You're not going to know yourself. And he's one baby.
I know.
You're not going to know yourself. One baby, 3 times the size.
Yeah, it'll be so
you
different.
Could be in for a rude shock.
I think he's going to shake things up because the boys have just been so gentle and lovely and easy. Anyway, we'll see. You can do whatever you want to do, little bubba.
You can always give them to me.
Well, I've got the best help possible, so thanks for that,
so,
Tizzie.
Episode 12, we are going to talk about, episode 12, we're moving on. So we're at chapter 5 in the book because we're working along the book. So
routines.
We said that people benefit from the routines because of communication, etc. the way I've developed my routines, we've talked about before. I developed them by watching children in society where demand feeding is done perfectly. And now we're going to talk about growth spurts while following the routines. Now, did you find that series on Netflix called Babies?
No, I still
So
haven't.
there's a series on Netflix called Babies, and they talk about growth spurts and how it's really, really fascinating how babies, children, they grow overnight. So they
Love this.
they
fact.
go to bed, like it might not be overnight, but they grow at once. So if you take your child, I want somebody to do this. Take your child and measure them every single day. One day they're X amount of centimeters, and the next day they're X amount of centimeters. They've grown. They don't grow a tiny bit every day. They grow in a growth spurt, and it's like they grow. Like it's like they go boom, and they just shoot up. It's even hard to explain, but it's like, you know, when you've got the baby clothes and they're wearing size 3 to 6 months, and they're wearing 3 to 6 months, and they're wearing 3 to 6 months, and then one day they grow out of the 3 to 6 month clothes.
Yes.
So you go and you put them in the 6 to 9 month clothes, which is the way the clothes are done in Ireland. And I buy a lot of my clothes from a certain website. That's the sizing. And it's how I'm doing my sizing on my clothing, which is coming out later in the year. But so you get 3 to 6, 3 to 6, and then you go to put it on, it's too small. So you go to the cupboard and you get the 6 to 9 month clothes, and they're also too small because they've grown so much that they've skipped a clothes size. And you think, how did I not notice them growing? Because they didn't grow slowly. It's a growth spurt. Boom. In one hit, they jump
literally.
up. Literally.
Amazing.
And the same with school shoes. You've got kids and they're in school shoes. And one day they say to you, my school shoes are too small. And then you go and they're fine in their shoes. They're fine in their shoes. And then one day they say, my school shoes are too small.
Yes.
And then you take them to the shop and they measure them and they're 2 sizes bigger, and then you feel really guilty because you think they must have been in shoes, but they weren't, because their foot just grows all of a sudden. And that's how they get growing pains and so on. So with my routines, we have, when you're at the breastfeeding routines, you need to be careful, because if you were to milk your breasts, as in feed your baby at the same time every day on the breastfeeding routines, and then your baby had a growth spurt, they'd need more food, and then you wouldn't have the extra milk. So that's why you will see, I say to express X amount at 6 weeks old, and then at 8 weeks old you express a different amount, and then people say, hold on, or let's say 4 weeks. So at 4 weeks you might be expressing, this is not the actual amounts, I'm just saying. At 4 weeks you might be expressing 90 mils from a breast, and then at 6 weeks I say to only express 30 mils, and then people contact me and go, oh, is that a mistake? That must be an error, it must be a mistake. No, because you're leaving the extra milk in the breast for the baby because they've had a growth spurt that week and they need extra milk.
Is that how that works?
Yes. So people get really confused, but it's to do with the growth spurts. So, and then as you were saying, if you're not following you asked this in another episode, if you're not following the expressing advice and you're feeding your baby from the breast, and then
topping up with formula during growth spurts,
you'd have to top up with formula during a growth spurt.
But then,
and then you were saying, does it take a while for your breast to make more milk? Yes. And I think you would have to leave your baby on the breast for extra sucking time to fool your body into making more milk.
And you'd be making it up. And
it's easier to express, but it is more messy. But some people don't want to express.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's about the expressing, and try and express when your baby's still asleep if you can.
Yep.
And even if your baby wakes up and is having a little bit of a suck, you might find you get more milk out.
Yeah. Okay.
If they're having a little bit of a cry in the background while you're expressing.
Oh, yes.
So crying does not do babies any harm. You know, it does not. So you might go in and just, chat to them while you express, or if you've got a partner who might be able to hold them while you express,
Okay.
Or you could get them up out of bed and put them into like a rocking swing while you're there, while you're watching them, while you express, Anyway, so that is growth spurts and expressing, and when babies have growth spurts, etc. Have you any questions about growth spurts?
I just have I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but do you know, because I'm going to have to buy one, I did have a hospital grade, pump-wise, manual versus electronic?
It's very personal. I found electronics so much better, but then I was expressing for babies in special care.
That's right.
And NICU. So you need to get more milk out.
Yes.
Some people there's a thing that they put over their nipple. It's
a hucker.
Hucker.
Mm.
Some people find that amazing and they get lots of milk with the hucker while they feed on the other breast. And I successfully breastfed 2 of my children, but I never got a letdown. Like, people go on about letdown. I've never felt a letdown in my life. I don't get that.
I don't think I did either. I wonder if that's an exclusively breastfeeding mother. Pumping, expressing.
I don't know, because people talk about, how letdown and this and that, and how you'll feel a letdown. And I mean, my children exclusively breastfed, like, Kieran and Killian till nearly 2 years.
They did too.
And I never never felt letdowns as such. So everyone's different. So don't be worried if you waiting on this amazing letdown.
Yes.
And then the other thing that people go on about is this amazing bond. As soon as you have your baby, you have this baby and you bond with the baby the second it's born. It's like some people don't. Like,
of course.
Don't
put that pressure.
Don't put the pressure on yourself.
No.
Like, you've had in some cases you've had major surgery from a C-section, and in other cases you've had a really hard birth.
Yeah.
You might not. Yes. You might just look at this thing and think, oh my goodness, I'm exhausted. Yes. This thing now that I have to look after and feed and be responsible for. It's not all perfect for everybody.
It's not. Can I tell a really interesting story on that? Because we talked about it the other day. So I was in labour for 21 hours with the boys before we went in for an emergency cesarean. So I was absolutely exhausted afterwards. And out of it, of course. But some hours, I don't know, later, they were in NICU, obviously, and I was in a different ward.
And when did you get to hold them?
Oh, not for weeks later.
Yep.
But Luke came in and said, hey, the boys are all set up. We can go and visit them. Let's go see the boys. And I said, no, I don't want to. I didn't want to. Yeah. I was
you would have been
completely
scared as well.
Numb. Yeah.
I would have
been. Yeah, I did not know, but I had no desire in that moment to. I just was like, well, I wouldn't mind a bit more morphine and having more sleep. I don't know, like it was just nothing.
As well as that, you were out of it on drugs.
Yes,
but your boys were born at 25 weeks and 3 days, and that would be frightening. Absolutely frightening. Like, I was told that they were going to deliver Dara. That they might be going to deliver Dara. I was really ill, and I was like, you can't, he's not cooked. And then they were like, well, there's this, they went into special care and they talked to Shannon and Andrew, a set of parents in there, Mackenzie's parents, and they asked them if we could come and look at Mackenzie, and then they brought us in and said, this is what a 28-week baby looks like. And Dara was further along than 28 weeks, but he was the size of a 28-weeker, and they were like, and when I saw her, I was just like, oh, yeah. Oh, no worries. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, yeah, you can take baby out. Oh, yeah, that looks fine. Oh, wow. Like, I
surprisingly
was terrified.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified. And then after I had him, and I wasn't with it for a little while after I had him because it was very complicated. Yeah. All I wanted to do was go to see them by baby clothes. And Nathan had to put me in a wheelchair and hike me from the Melbourne hospital, which was down the bottom, past the old Francis Perry, which was in Carlton, to buy baby clothes. I didn't want to go and see him till I got baby clothes. I had to get him baby clothes. It was like, it was so bizarre. It was like, I just had this, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. And so if you're heading into birth right now, no expectations because you are going to have your own individual experience for whatever reason, and your feelings will follow. Yes.
I was robbed because Killian, really I seriously, I've got to tell you a really funny story about Killian's birth for a minute.
Yeah.
But I seriously thought that Killian was 35 weeks. I thought he was 35 weeks. They thought he was 34 weeks. And he could have been with us, but they put him in special care. And I was robbed of that first night and that holding and that. When you have your baby, I want you to try, people, if you can, put it on your chest and let them crawl up to their very first, get up to the boob and have their very first feed, which we talked about in one of the first episodes, and let them find the boob. They can only do it once when they're very first born. But when we had Killian, so we had Dara and he was a little toddler, and then we had Killian, and then there were complications, and I was on the surgical ward, which I shouldn't have been, but for some bizarre reason they thought I'd had a hysterectomy, which I hadn't had. I'm complicated. Anyhow. And then they told us that we could go and see Killian, and Killian was at special care, and it was a new Francis Perry, and it was a different level.
Right.
And then all of us, there was me, my sister, her children, my friend Heather Saxima or something with her child Neil, and Dara, and all of us. So we all left the hospital room, and we were heading to the special care baby nursery. In COVID, it would never happen.
No way.
There must have been 20 of us, yeah? We lost Dara. We left him in the lift.
Oh, my
So I've got this new baby, and I've left my 20-month-old toddler in the lift.
Of course.
Like, we just lost him. Everybody thought he was with someone else.
Oh, no.
The very first time I'm going to visit his brother, he's gone, he's not there. Not good. Anyway, moving on. Getting out and about on a routine. So when you follow a routine, it is really important that you get out and about. It is really important for the mum's sanity to get out and about on a routine.
Very.
It's really important that the baby has at least one sleep a day outside in fresh air. We know if a baby is outside in fresh air, they sleep better at night.
Yes.
In some countries, they put babies outside in the fresh air on even unless it's more than minus 30 degrees. Yeah. It's really important, and it's really important for mum to get out and about. So I would say try, if possible, to do one sleep in the pram. So we've talked about this before. Pram should be like carry cot tops, which are a bit like the old bassinet. Some people call them bassinets. I call them carry tops. Carry cot tops. Flat. Baby should lie in it. Baby should be able to, lie in it with their bedding. You should be able to see them. Make sure you get one that's got air vents and so on. Go for a walk to a cafe. Sit down. Have a coffee. Try and get out. Try and be social. Or get a mum's group to go walking with you and walk for one of those sleeps, or walk and sit. Or if you've got a toddler,
younger kids for a walk.
If you've got a toddler, go to the park. Try and get out and about on a routine. Routines make it really easy to plan things because you know when your baby's going to sleep.
Yes.
You know that your baby's going to sleep, have that nap at 4:30 in the afternoon. You know that you can kind of go wrong in the afternoon, so you could do your doctor's appointments, your personal immunisation if mum needs a flu jab or COVID jab or something. If your kids need doctor's appointments or you need your 6-week check, you can do them in that 4:30 kind of nap time. You know when you can do things. So that's really important. Now, the next thing in the book that we're going to talk about is the dream feed. Yes. Now, this is another claim for fame of mine, right? So, I invented the name dream feed, and now everyone talks about it. And they put it in all these magazine articles and stuff, but they actually get the advice wrong.
Right.
And it's really weird. It's weird when you come up with a name and then people start in using it and writing articles and stuff on it, but you get no credit for it. I don't know.
You'd
It's
feel
strange.
a bit robbed.
It is a bit robbed. It's a bit strange. But then you know that these people, like there's an Instagram post I put up yesterday. Someone had put up a post of all these books. Well, people contact me about the books because 2 of the books are word for word my advice.
Right.
It's like these people have read my books and then gone out and created their own books. And my stuff's in the book. Even one of them has got my routines to the minute exactly in the books and the dream feed. But you have to see it. Well, it is allowed, and you have to see it as a compliment.
Yeah, of course.
And you have to look at, if you didn't have your books, Tizzie, they wouldn't have their good books.
Yeah,
anyway, you have to see it as a compliment.
It's nice
So the dream feed. Why did we introduce the dream feed? Well, I introduced the dream feed because when I first came to Australia and was writing the book, everybody was saying to start your baby on solids at 6 months. And there was no way a baby was going to be able to go to bed at 7 o'clock at night and sleep till 7 o'clock in the morning at around the 4 or 5 month age if they hadn't started solids. So that was the main reason for introducing the dream feed, was so that it would be there until they started solids. But of course, I very soon realised that telling people to start solids at 6 months was an absolute joke. I believe it's causing more allergies. I believe the reason why there's more allergies, this is my personal belief, in Australia, is because people are starting solids later in Australia compared to lots of other countries in the world. And I believe it causes sleep problems. And I believe this whole sleep regression at 4 months has come from delayed solids. I think it's a big, big, big mistake to start solids at 6 months. And I also believe, especially if you watch that documentary on babies and talking about the iron they need, leaving it till 6 months. you're going to affect their learning.
Yeah.
You're going to affect their brain.
Yeah.
They need the iron
Yeah.
in the rice cereal
Okay.
and when you start the solids. So
Yeah.
that is why the dream feed came about. So I still think it's a good idea to do dream feed. I think if you do a dream feed, you will get your baby sleeping from 7 to 7 with the dream feed sooner. Doing the dream feed cuts out that next feed. So if you do, let's say you've got a 7-week-old baby and they go to bed at 7 o'clock at night, you do the dream feed. I'll explain how in a minute. You do the dream feed at 10:30 at night, and then that baby sleeps till 7 o'clock in the morning. If you didn't do the dream feed, that baby might wake at 5 o'clock in the morning, and that makes that 7 o'clock really difficult because they have a feed at 5 and then they need to refeed at 7 and they're not hungry.
Yep.
How you do the dream feed is you pick up your sleeping baby. You do not do it. Some people say to do it when they're flat on their back. You can't do it when they're in bed flat on their back because of the way their esophagus is.
Okay.
And it could actually, they could asphyxiate where they swallow where the fluid goes into their lungs.
Yes.
It's not a good thing to do. So
Okay,
you
so you've
need
gotta
to
pick the baby
pick
up.
the baby up. You pick the baby up and you put your nipple or you put the teat of the bottle in at their lips, in their mouth. They'll open their mouth, they'll take it and they will feed while they are asleep.
Yes.
That's how you do the dream feed. Some babies need to be woken fully for this feed until as late as 8 weeks. It says in the book to do the dream feed, it says from 4 weeks, but it's saying, the 4 to 6 week routine dream feed. But then it says in the text in the book, you start the dream feed at about 6 weeks. The reason why it's written on the 4 to 6 week routine is because some babies, we don't know. You walked out of the room to go to the toilet when I talked about this a couple of episodes ago, a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was talking about babies and the neurologist who I was talking to who was explaining that I had not corrected Dara and Killian's ages. I just went with whatever they're, so if they were being born 10 weeks ago, I called them 10 weeks. If they were born 12 weeks ago, I called them 12 weeks. With Kieran, I had said to this friend, he's not smiling. I'm really worried he's not smiling. And babies smile at a certain age. And she said to me, think about from the day of conception through to 40 weeks, right? Think about how much growing and changing they've done. Now, if you're saying that a baby smiles at 6 weeks,
yes.
Okay?
Yep.
If your baby is born at 34 weeks, they're not going to smile at 6 weeks. They're going to smile at 12 weeks.
Of course.
Because that brain development is still happening.
Yes.
Even if they're out of the womb from 34 weeks to 30 to 40 weeks, that doesn't change their brain development. Their brain development is, they smile. Let's say it's 6 weeks that they smile. I can't remember. I think it's between 8 and 12 weeks, but let's say it's 6 weeks that they smile. Yep. It's 46 weeks after conception that they smile.
Yep.
If they're born at 34 weeks, you're asking them to smile at 40 weeks. It's not going to happen.
That's right. Yes.
So with the dream feed, we don't know if that baby is 2 weeks early, is that because 40 weeks was 2 weeks early? Or if the baby comes at 42 weeks, is that we don't actually always know when a baby was conceived. And then, so if someone's following the routines from week 41 birth, then you might be able to do the dream feed 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? It slightly shifts.
Everyone's a little different.
It's a little different. The routines are guides, and you watch the baby. And if the baby is having shorter sleeps, and we see second children and bigger in weight children move through the routines faster. So that's why it says 4 to 6 weeks on the routine.
Okay.
Because some 6-week-olds could be on that routine as early as 4 weeks. Okay? So dream feed, that's how you do it. You pick them up
you feed them,
and you feed them while they're asleep.
Down again?
Yes. And then you
don't need to change their nappies.
No, you would change the nappies if they pooed.
Yes.
You do not need to change the nappy.
And do we need to burp them?
You normally do not need to burp them because there's no build-up of wind from the day. And they normally take it so calmly.
They really do. I remember this
while they're asleep.
Yes.
And it's also, you think that you don't like getting up and doing it, and then when you stop it, you crave it. You actually mourn the dream feed.
Yeah.
The dream feed is the time where you are alone with your baby, and no one's going, Mom, Mommy, Mom, can you do this? You are just you and your baby. Even your husband is leaving you alone, and you or your partner or your wife or whoever you've got. It's such a lovely time, and then when it goes, you're sad that it's gone. And so dream feed. Now night feeds, night feeds are different because your baby wakes and demands a night feed. And young babies with the night feed, you would turn all the lights on and wake them up fully for it to make sure they get a big feed.
Okay. So
you can let your baby demand feed at night when they're back at over their birth weight, when they've regained their birth weight, and they are like if they were born at 38 weeks, you'd wait till they're over 40 weeks.
Okay.
But when they're over their birth weight,
okay, so they've got to be
over 3 kg, so they've got to be
minimum 40 weeks,
3 kg,
past their 3 kg, and past their birthday. Weight.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if your baby was born at 4 kg,
mental note,
4 kg, then you can let them demand feed at night when they're back over 4 kg.
Okay.
And
otherwise, we're waking every 3 hours.
Unless you're learning. No, this is about the baby.
Yes.
You still need to wake if you're breastfeeding every 3 hours for your boobs.
Okay.
But once you get past that and you're onto night feeds, okay? So night feeds. Your baby can wake up and demand night feeds if your baby has regained their birth weight and is over 3 kg. And you can wait for your baby to demand these feeds if your baby is over 3 kgs or has... Oh, hold on. You can wait for your baby to demand these feeds, but if your baby is under 3 kg or not regained their birth weight, you will need to wake her up at night.
Yep.
Obviously, this is after you've established your milk.
Sure.
So you have to have done
the first
few days.
Yep.
Yeah, the first 2 weeks. Yep. Yes. So with the routines.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then we move on to babies over 4 weeks. But I think we'll just quickly do babies over 4 weeks. So if your baby is breastfed and over 4 weeks and under 8 weeks when reading this book for the first time, you can only use the routines as a guide. That's to do with the milk. So again, go to the book and read that up in the book. It's important that you read that up in the book.
Yeah.
But that's to do with your milk supply and you won't have been expressing and growth spurts.
Yeah.
And then we have here the cuddle, because so many people, so on page 91 of the book, we talk about the cuddle sleep, because so many people contacted me saying, but when are you supposed to hold your baby and love your baby and cuddle your baby? And I thought, what's wrong with these people? Why do they think on a routine? So then that's when I put in, you can cuddle your baby at the 4:30 nap and made it really obvious and a set time, because people seem to be worried that if they cuddled their baby or held their baby or kissed their baby, they'd spoil their baby. It was very strange.
It is.
So I put it in there just so that people had a set time, that they knew this time of each day you can cuddle your baby and hold them and let them sleep on you so you don't feel like you're missing out. And then catnapping in the first 10 weeks is the last thing on page 92 that we're going to cover. So catnapping in the first 2 weeks is most commonly because you're putting your baby down to bed when they're tired enough to nap. So they're tired enough to just sleep one sleep cycle, but they're not tired enough to sleep, which is more than one sleep cycle put together. So that's one of the reasons. But the other, and that can be because, again, they might be a different age from conception that we think, or they might be a second child and more stimulated. So you might just have to put them up, keep them up a little bit longer, and then they will have a decent sleep. Okay?
Yep.
So we're going to call that a wrap for episode 12, because I know that the question you said might be a long one.
Yeah.
So let's move on to whose question have we got?
We've got a question from B today, and it's regarding finger food. So after a choking scare, how can you rebuild confidence back as a mum to keep building on the texture of different foods?
Okay. So the first thing I'd be saying about that is we need to be very careful that the baby was actually choking and it wasn't gagging, right? Choking and gagging can look really, really similar to a panicked parent. Okay. So I have a YouTube video called Arms Up.
Yes.
It's worth watching. I will link to it off this podcast, link to it in the podcast notes.
Yep.
So let's go back to feeding your baby. When you first start feeding your baby, I say to feed your baby pureed food. And I say to feed your baby pureed food the whole way through to about 10 months. Because I have observed
the texture. Yep.
Because I have observed that if you feed your baby pureed food and then you start adding some lumps in, the baby, picture eating some nice smooth food and then all of a sudden having a pea-sized lump in it. The baby gets a fright and they're like, oh, and they gag and they get a fright and they go through food refusal.
Right.
So it's very important to always give them pureed food while you're feeding them off the spoon, so that they can just take it, swallow it, take it, swallow it, take it, swallow it. if you give them lumpy food before 10 months, they suddenly go, oh, what's that? And they gag, and it actually scares them, and it can cause food refusal.
Sure,
okay?
makes sense.
But it's really important that they learn to chew, and they learn lumps, and they learn to eat lumps. So I say right from the start, from when you very first start solids, start doing baby-led weaning.
Mm-hmm.
So you follow a routine, and you give them the set food in the book on what foods you give when, and you give it as puree.
Okay.
And the feeding book lists exactly how much they're supposed to have. And everybody is really, really shocked with the amount of food a baby eats. And then they get to 2 years old and they stop eating. Everybody panics because they're not eating. Yes, the amount of foods in the feeding book are a lot, and people
growing a lot.
And people get shocked.
Yes.
But that's what they need.
Yep.
And they're averages.
Yep.
So you give them food to chew on. So you give them food to suck and chew on, from which I call baby-led weaning, off the family table.
Okay.
So anything you're eating, you give to them. It doesn't matter if it's cooked in salt or it's cooked in chili powder or it's cooked. Obviously, you wouldn't want to burn their mouth off, but whatever your family eats, you let them try it.
And this is after they've had
their puree. Okay. It's really good to eat as a family. We eat as a family. I don't know when we started, but we eat as a family every single night. And it's when we talk about their day, we talk about things that have happened. My children have this habit, all children have this habit. You go upstairs, you say to them it's nighttime, it's time for bed, off you go to sleep. And then they go, oh, Mum, I just want to tell you about what happened at school today. Now, a lot of the time, they know as soon as they say this awful thing happened at school today, they've just bought an hour of you sitting there for 1 hour talking to them, and they're not going to sleep yet. So if you really, really, truly think your child has a concern, talk to them about it. If not, say to them, we're going to put that on the agenda for tomorrow night's dinner. And then you talk to them about it at dinner. And it's really, really, we sit as a family, but we eat nowhere except at our kitchen bench because Nathan's a clean freak. Kitchen bench, and we live in the country and we don't want mice. Kitchen bench or kitchen table, and we eat as a family. We have always eaten as a family. Our children have never eaten in front of we don't really have a telly. They don't eat in front. We got tellies during COVID, but we've never. You didn't use them before COVID.
Your main living area.
Anyway, right? So you feed them food from the family table. Yes, if it's cooked in salt, they're not going to absorb enough salt from sucking on a
at the end
on a chop, sucking on a lamb chop, or sucking on.
Gosh.
You've got to make sure it's not going to be like you wouldn't give them a croissant where it could go into a ball of dough and you've got to supervise them. Yep. If this child did choke, then you need to talk to your health professional about why your child choked, because it's not normal for babies to choke. Okay. It's normal for babies to gag.
Yes.
It's not normal for babies to choke. Okay. If they really, really have had a proper choke, and chokes are really bad. Do you know that grapes, regardless of whether they're cut into quarters, cut into halves, when the grape mixes with saliva, it swells. No child should eat a grape until over the age of 5. Half grapes, quarter grapes, full grapes. No child should eat a grape. Children die on choking on grapes. Okay. They get stuck in the airway and they swell and swell and swell. Now, so if your child is choking, Kieran chokes because he's got Marcus Gunn jaw wink syndrome, and for some reason, every time he eats calamari, he chokes really badly. Wow. Yes, if you give your child an inappropriate food like a grape or a piece of Frankfurt or something, they could choke. Yes. That's different. You know why they've choked. But if they're just choking on normal food, you need to work out why, and you need to talk to your health professional.
Because they have an exceptionally strong gag reflex naturally, so they shouldn't choke easier.
And you need to work out why they're choking. Now, because gagging and choking looks the same, if your child starts gagging, so they go, they're gagging, it's like a choke, okay? And it's still dangerous, and they can still die from it, okay? And I'm not medical. This is my non-medical advice, okay? If they are gagging, you grab their arms and pull them straight up in the air.
Okay.
and it moves the way the whole airway is, and the food normally pops out.
Okay.
Right?
This
And
is
they
on
might vomit.
You've done
okay?
a video.
And it's on the
Yes.
YouTube video,
Yeah.
and it always gets lots of attention because people think, no, you should get them out of the high chair, bang them back. No, you should. I like to use high chairs with no straps.
Mm-hmm.
My children have always learnt from very early on that they sit in the high chair and we sit with them. I don't sit
Yes.
them in the high chair and leave them.
Well,
Okay.
I've never strapped the boys
And
either.
I don't like strapping them in because if you strap them in,
You can't get them out.
but if you've got a child who doesn't understand boundaries and climbs and what it's going to keep climbing up and whatever, you know, then you may have to strap them in. But baby Bjorn don't even have straps on their high chairs, you know. So strapping them in can be more dangerous because you can't get them out if they're gagging or choking. I'm not saying don't strap them in. I'm saying you've got to look at your own individual circumstances.
Yes.
If they're strapped in, you should have a strap where you've got one button, click, and all the straps open.
Yep.
And then try and lift them out by their arms. So if they're really choking and gagging, and it's a gag, it could actually be a real choke. If you grab their arms, so first of all, arms up. So if they start gagging, and every time I share this video, people say they've used it, they've tried it, they love it, and it worked. So they're gagging. Grab their arms, put their arms straight up in the air and go, arms up. And your children will start learning it, and they'll start doing it themselves, and they'll even start saying, arm up, and eventually arms up. If you hear them saying that, you realise they're gagging and they're in trouble, and you can turn to them, you know. So if it doesn't work, you undo the clip and grab them by their arms and lift them out of the high chair by arms up. And if it's still not working, you need to practice the first aid that you have learned as a parent, because every single parent has no excuse not to have done a first aid course. You have to do a first aid course. There is no excuse. You can do it online. You can do it in person. There is zero excuse to have not done a first aid course. Now, you probably find that when you do a first aid course, you probably find that you won't need it for your own children, because it's really hard to do first aid on your own children. But at least the other people in the community around you will have done it. You will be able to do first aid on other people and other people's children.
Yeah.
But when it's your own child, you might just stand there and freeze and go, you know?
Yeah.
So back to this mum with her choking. Make sure you've done a first aid course. Introduce the food. Make sure to learn the arms up and gagging. And you just have to do it. It's really hard. I mean, she wants to know how you build the confidence again. You just slowly do. But again, it depends on how the child choked, what the reason was. Did she suddenly start giving the child lumps in its food? Because that's not, the kid will gag.
Yes.
Will gag with that.
Yes.
So I hope we've helped you,
Yeah,
Olivia,
I hope so,
with your
B.
question. Or B. Sorry, B.
It's okay.
Olivia was last week's question.
Yeah. So, good advice there. And it's again, very Tizzie Hall. It's more preventative.
Yes.
So looking at the reason why that happened, and just slowly work your way up to it.
Just going back for a second to the family table.
Yeah.
We have obviously some people say they can't talk at the family table because they've got screens, but it's interesting because people have often said to me, and I feel like I get watched everywhere, that they see us in a restaurant as a family and we're all talking. And that's because that's probably the only time we do talk. We look like a perfect family in the evening at our family dinner because we always have a family dinner together.
Yeah, it's lovely.
You know, and it is really important.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's a wrap for this week.
Or maybe for this series if we were someone else, but we're not.
Yeah,
so we will
we're
be
gonna keep
back
going.
for episode 13.
Yes.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Bye. You have been listening to the Save Our Sleep podcast, brought to you by the International Baby Whisperer Proprietary Limited. You will find more information about the Save Our Sleep philosophy, product support, and how to watch the mini clips that accompany this podcast at saveoursleep.com. You may find the Save Our Sleep social media accounts by searching Tizzie Hall on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for all my how-to videos and to watch the podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate the podcast and share it with your friends. I would like to thank Zoe Starr for co-hosting, Ben at Fundamental Studios Geelong for the amazing podcast recording room, Nick Dale at Primer Films for this production, and most of all, you, the listeners, Without you, there would be no reason for this podcast. Please enjoy, stay safe, and Zoe and I will look forward to chatting with you again next week.